So it has been a minute since I've looked at the SV650, but I got a track day coming up in less than 2 months, so it's about time to turn our attention from VFRs over to the SV650. In this episode of Motorcycle Track Day Noob, I am going to be trying to do a carburetor synchronization on this bike. And there's an interesting thing about this one that's making it a little bit tricky, is that the intake nipple on this carburetor, it's on the intake boot down there, I've got it plugged off now. There's no real clever way to get a gauge on it. So what I've done is I've unbolted the 3 bolts to keep the radiator off. I pushed that forward. The other one that we're going to have to go into is right here, hooking up with 2 of our vacuum gauges, and then apparently there it is, hooking up our hoses to those and balancing the 2 out. The synchronization itself should be fairly straightforward. However, getting a gauge onto that one is going to be a little bit tricky. So I've got 2 options. One, just put one of those hoses on it, try to get my hands in there after pulling this off and put the gauge on it. 2, if I'm going to be doing this more often, and I think the right thing to do is actually cut a length of vacuum hose here, run it from here up over the top of the diaphragm cap here. So I've just got a capped off, for the most time, hose that I can then plug into with a barb if I'm going to be doing synchronizations more often instead of having to drop the radiator forward every time. So I'm going to see if I can get a length of hose on there, do that. I think that's the better way to do it, and then we'll get this thing outside and do a synchronization. So that was easier said than done, but really not that big a deal. So I've got the radiator buttoned back up, and what I have here coming from that front intake boot nipple is this vacuum line, which I've labeled VAC1 in case I ever sell this to somebody and they're like, what the fuck is this line? Or if I go back to it in a year and I forget what this is, what the fuck is this line? Well, that's vacuum 1. So I'm going to be able to put a 3/16 barb on the end of there, and then I'll be able to tie into it with the gauges. This vacuum hose that I got a spool of this is like 3/16. These are a little bit bigger, so it is a little bit of a struggle to get, to get the vacuum hose over it. You can see the difference in those, but you can get this thinner vacuum hose over it, which is the same diameter as those gauges. So I'm going to be doing this off of an auxiliary tank. It's going to be looking a little bit differently if you're doing this with the fuel tank on. So I'm going to actually be splicing right into here. I'm bypassing completely the fuel pump here. This is actually a vacuum operated fuel pump. I'm not going to be using this, so that's why this is normally hooked up to here. That's how this pump is going to be operating. We're going to be putting the oh, that's right. This is different. This is where you're supposed to do it off of. We're going to be doing it off of this one. You could actually take the vacuum and synchronize it off of either of these, because there's 2 different vacuum ports in here, because one is going to be operating this fuel pump. I'm probably just going to leave this one capped off, because if you're doing this by the manual, this is the one that's actually going to be tied into the fuel pump here so that you can deliver fuel to the thing, and then I'm going to be taking the vacuum reading off of this one and here. Yeah, that's what we're going to do. So I haven't started this thing in like at least a month, and not sure how that's going to go, but I know that I need to get it warm. I know I need to get it hot to be able to do the synchronization. So I don't have the gauges hooked up now. I've got 1, 2, and 3 of the intake ports all blocked off. So hopefully I get it started. I'm going to let it run for a while. I actually have to do an oil change today, so now's the time. I just want to get it hot, and yeah, hopefully this starts. Now we're actually set up to be able to do the synchronization. We've got the bike pretty warm, let it idle for like 10 minutes. Sounds like it's running pretty good. I'm certain that these are going to be out of synchronization because I know that I've bumped the screw a couple times when I was cleaning the carburetor. So what I'm going to be doing is using this little screwdriver to be able to adjust this synchronization screw. And what that will do is it will change when the 2 butterflies open. The butterfly, you can see it behind there. We want these 2 opening at the exact same time. If they're not, then the engine's going to be out of balance. If it's in balance, it's going to be perfect. That'd be great. When I was running it, I was a little bit confused. I was like, what is all this fucking air coming out of here? It's actually the air that was pulsing out of the breathers. So, because the airbox isn't on here, I was a bit confused when I was holding it over here. Like, what did I forget? So what I've got is sync port 2 hooked up here, and I'm still capped off on my fuel pump because I'm running off an auxiliary. And then on here, that new line that I ran, I've got a 3/16 barb in it, and I took the cap off of it, and I've plugged in number 1. And we should be able to get these two to the same airflow by only adjusting this one synchronization screw. This will change the balance between 1 and 2, and we want those two to be the same. So I'll get the bike running, and then we'll get these gauges reading the same. My tachometer is about 300 RPMs off. These usually call for doing it at idle or some number above idle, but I'm a little bit screwed up on after reseating that thing, so we will get these to run the same. That's my goal. Racket is outside. That's that Michigan flag waving around. Go blue. All righty, let's get this synchronized. Okay, fuel on. Bike on. Gauges on. We're well out of sync right now, and that's probably because I bumped it. So we're at about 9.2. All right, let's see how this adjusts. This is gonna be tough for me to film, I'm sorry. So when you're pushing on this, if you just push up, it's actually gonna open the throttle. So you wanna just move it. There we go. It right there. That's it right there. Still waiting for the day that the neighbors call the cops. They haven't done it yet. I'm on a really good relationship with most of the neighbors, except for that one. I believe we are synchronized enough. I'm not going to bore you with the details of an oil change on this bike, but I am going to leave this video with a question. Anybody that has more experience or understands this better than me, maybe you can help me out. I'm pulling off a KN138, which comes with the nut on the top, the welded nut that you're not supposed to use to tighten the thing on, but you are supposed to use it to help you get it off. This is an issue at some tracks. I knew it was going to be an issue potentially at Blackhawk or Road America when I went there, and it kind of was. I almost didn't get to do it because I had this thing. The question I'm going to be asking is I'm going to be putting an HF138 high flow. This does not have the nut on top of it. I've also got a new oil drain plug with a pre-drill on it. I could have drilled this myself, but I didn't want to drill the only one that I had, so I wanted to have a spare with me. So then I'm going to be putting around here, I'm going to be putting one of these around there. I got to drill through here. The question I have, I'm going to be putting Rotella synthetic T6 inside of it. The question I have is, all right, so I've got, shit, I should have opened this before. All right, pretend that worm, what the fuck is that thing called? Pretend that a hose clamp, the worm gear thing in it, pretend this is wrapped around here. All right, so I've got my new HF138 sitting on here, all right? So I can safety wire, but where do I safety wire it to? I can't figure this out. Now, I realize I probably got to drill something, but I'm too afraid to drill something on the engine. It sure seems like I could probably pop right through there. And maybe that's what people do, but I have not found a picture, and I've been looking for where to put this thing. I believe off of here on a Gen 2 would be an oil cooler, which a Gen 1 doesn't have. So if this sits here, got the thing around there, safety wired to here. That's what I think is correct, but I just don't know. Because I've also got to do the drain plug, which is here. This has to safety wire to something as well. Maybe the same spot over here? If anybody has a picture of how to safety wire a Gen 1 SV650, please send it to me. If you watch this far, thanks for watching. Actually, there's one more thing that I remembered, because I learned this after, like, I don't know, 17 years of owning motorcycles, and I never knew this. If you put this into the off position, you can still crank the motorcycle to push oil through it. And in fact, several manuals call for this after you do an oil change, to push oil into the parts that don't have oil. I never knew that before. So I got it in the off position. I'm gonna crank it a couple times. Well, it doesn't work on this one. Works on that one. I'm still an idiot. So apparently you can't do it on this one. You can do it on that one. That's the manual I read it about. This one, I didn't read the manual to see that you could do that. I guess you cannot do that. If you really want to see some idiocy, as bad as I am with motorcycles, wait till you see how badly I can burn chicken. Anyway, now if you've watched this far, thanks for watching. All right, I gotta prove I'm not lying. This is an off right now. See, told you.